You are sitting at your desk. Nothing is wrong. No danger. No threat. Nothing. And yet your heart is racing. Your chest is tight. Your mind is scanning for something and anything that could explain why you feel this way. Here is what neuroscience just confirmed. Your brain is not malfunctioning. It is running a circuit that was never designed to tell the difference between a real threat and one you only imagined. And a review published in Nature Reviews Neuroscience, one of the most respected scientific journals in the world, has now mapped exactly how that circuit works. By the end of this video, you will understand why your brain responds to a worried thought the same way it responds to actual danger, what 3 separate threat circuits are doing in your brain right now, and what that means for the 284 million people worldwide living with an anxiety disorder. Before we go further, because this is curious and verified, here is the source. The review is titled Neural Circuit Basis of Pathological Anxiety. It was published in Nature Reviews Neuroscience in January 2025. The authors are researchers from Stanford University School of Medicine and the National Center for PTSD at the Veterans Affairs Palo Alto Healthcare System. The full link is in the description. Everything in this video comes directly from this paper. Now, let's get into it. Anxiety disorders are the most prevalent mental health conditions in the world. They affect approximately 284 million people globally. And yet, as the Stanford Review makes clear, the precise neurobiological mechanisms behind them remain poorly understood. Current diagnoses are based almost entirely on observable symptoms. You report what you feel. A clinician categorizes it. Treatment follows from that category. But the review argues this approach misses something fundamental. Different people diagnosed with the same anxiety disorder may have completely different patterns of dysfunction in their underlying brain circuits. 2 people, same diagnosis, different brains. This is the problem the review sets out to address. The researchers synthesized functional neuroimaging evidence from studies using brain scanning technology, specifically fMRI, which tracks brain activity in real time, to map what actually happens in the brains of people with pathological anxiety. What they found is that anxiety does not live in a single brain region. It lives in circuits. And the review identifies 3 distinct threat circuits that work differently in people with anxiety disorders. The first is the acute threat circuit. This is what most people associate with anxiety, the immediate fear response. The amygdala, the brain's threat detector, fires in response to something perceived as dangerous. Heart rate increases. Breathing accelerates. Attention narrows. In healthy individuals, the prefrontal cortex quickly evaluates the threat and signals whether it is real. If it isn't, the response damps down. In people with pathological anxiety, this regulatory signal is weaker. The amygdala fires. The prefrontal cortex fails to adequately regulate it. The alarm stays on. The second circuit is less well known and more revealing. The review calls it the distant threat circuit. This is not about threats that are present. It is about threats that are possible, uncertain, ambiguous, somewhere in the future. This circuit involves a structure called the bed nucleus of the stria terminalis, or BNST, alongside the amygdala, hypothalamus, and hippocampus. The BNST is critically active when a threat is not immediate but might be coming. The anticipation of something bad, the worry that something could go wrong, the scanning of the future for danger that isn't there yet. This is the circuit that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. thinking about a conversation that hasn't happened, or rehearsing a scenario that may never occur. The review found that in people with anxiety disorders, this distant threat circuit shows elevated reactivity, even when there is no identifiable threat in the environment. The brain is responding to possibilities, to imagination, to anticipation, the same neural pathways, the same physiological response, whether the threat is real or invented. The third circuit is what the review calls sustained threat. This is chronic, ongoing threat processing, the kind that persists even when acute danger has passed. It involves the medial prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the insula. In people with sustained anxiety, these regions maintain a continuous low-level threat signal across time. Not a spike, not a moment of fear, a baseline state of threat that never fully turns off. This maps directly onto what many people describe as their experience of generalized anxiety, not a specific fear, but a persistent undercurrent of unease that colors everything. The review found that disruptions across all three circuits, acute, distant, and sustained threat, often coexist in the same individual, and that the particular pattern of circuit dysfunction varies considerably between people with the same diagnosis. Here is the finding that changes how we think about anxiety treatment. The review argues that treating anxiety as a single diagnostic category obscures this neurobiological diversity. Two people with generalized anxiety disorder may have different dominant circuit dysfunctions, one primarily in acute threat reactivity, another primarily in sustained threat processing. Current symptom-based diagnosis treats them identically. Neuroscience-informed treatment would stratify them based on their specific patterns of brain circuit vulnerability. The researchers describe this as a shift toward precision psychiatry, matching treatment not to symptoms alone, but to the underlying neural architecture of each individual's anxiety. This is not yet standard clinical practice, but it is where the research is pointing. Now, a critical eye. The review draws primarily on task-based fMRI evidence. Brain scanning studies have well-documented limitations. Sample sizes are often small. Many studies were conducted in highly controlled laboratory conditions that may not reflect the complexity of real-world anxiety. The review also acknowledges that establishing causality is difficult. Whether these circuit abnormalities cause anxiety disorders or whether they develop as a consequence of living with chronic anxiety remains difficult to disentangle. Additionally, most functional neuroimaging research has been conducted in Western, educated, industrialized populations. The review notes that neurobiological findings may not generalize equally across different cultural and demographic groups, and the shift toward precision psychiatry, while promising in principle, faces significant practical challenges. Routine brain scanning for anxiety diagnosis is not currently feasible at scale in most healthcare systems. These are important constraints on how far the findings can currently be applied. Let's bring this back to where we started. You are sitting at your desk. Nothing is wrong, and yet the alarm is sounding. The Stanford review explains why. Your brain runs three separate threat circuits: for immediate danger, for possible future danger, and for ongoing background threat. In pathological anxiety, one or more of these circuits shows elevated reactivity, weakened regulation, or both. And crucially, these circuits do not distinguish between a threat that is real and one that is imagined, anticipated, or remembered. The same pathways, the same biological response. Your brain is not broken. It is running threat circuits that are sensitive to a kind of danger that does not show up in the room you are sitting in. The question the research leaves us with is this: if anxiety is a circuit problem, not just a thought problem, what does that say about how we have been treating it? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The full study is linked in the description, peer-reviewed and published in Nature Reviews Neuroscience. As always on this channel, the source comes first. Subscribe if you want more, and we will see you in the next one.